Welcome to Anchor Ministry in downtown Cartersville, Georgia. Beautiful place to be. Today we have a special for you. We have Chad Smith, we have Keven Culvert, we have Daphney Swilliing, we have Phil Cunningham, and we have Pam Whitfield. They're all been on Anchor Ministry before giving their testimonies. You're going to hear just a little bit of where they were at, what God's done in their lives. I want to encourage you to have a testimony. Everybody who's been born again has a testimony somewhere. The greatest testimonies are those who stayed with the Lord Jesus Christ and didn't go astray. We want to encourage you to text Anchor Ministry and let them know what you like about their programming, what you would like to see more in their programming. Text them. You can even email them at right here. And you can go to their website and see what God has been doing in the communities through them.
The lowest point in my whole life was when I was 31 years old. And my wife had left me with my kid. That was absolutely the lowest point in my life. And it was because of my drinking. I was a terrible alcoholic. I woke up at 9 o'clock every morning and started drinking beer until the liquor store would get open, and then switch over to liquor about noon and drink till I went to sleep every day.
Life circumstances. I was getting ready to get married. I was getting ready to graduate college, and a baby just was not in the picture, was not in my future at that moment, and just happened to where I found myself pregnant. I had no relationship, and it just wasn't part of the picture. And in the room, going to the clinic that morning, the Lord gave me 3 opportunities to leave and to walk out and to save my child. But that didn't happen, unfortunately. And instead of walking down the hall where it said exit and I could leave the clinic for life, I turned to the room and the door of death, and my son was taken. It was my choice. It was a selfish decision. I regret it every day. It's not something I would recommend anyone to do for any reason.
Well, it was May 25th, 1999, the C-Men, which is the narcotics squad in Cherokee County, came to my house. We had a meth lab at the house, and they came to the house, and we knew then that we was in big trouble.
It was the end of the line.
Yeah. Yep.
And what was you thinking during this time?
Oh, Lord, help me. I'd never been in trouble, but I knew we were in trouble.
And at the time when they busted our lab, it was the first lab in Cherokee County, so they made a real big do about it. I mean, all the TV channels was there. There was helicopters flying all around.
Oh, this ain't the first time you've been on TV?
No.
So how much time was y'all looking at?
Well, I knew that I'd been in trouble my whole life for drugs, so I knew that if I ever got caught again, that I'd get a life sentence because of the habitual act. So no matter what they was going to give me for the drugs, I'd get a life sentence on top of that.
Life sentence?
Yeah.
And what about you?
I'd never been in trouble before.
What did you think when you got in jail?
I was scared to death.
It started out innocent enough, in my family.
Yeah.
My father was a big drinker. He would give me sips of beer when I was 5 years old. At 7 years old, I'm popping tops at the parties at the lakes and stuff like that. I got into a fight with a couple of kids, and he seemed to really put his stamp of approval upon that. And so it was just these mixed signals, from my parents. They would have never wanted the things to happen that did. And then when we moved, we were growing up. I grew up in a little town, Toccoa, Georgia, up in North Georgia. And when we moved to the Atlanta area, of course, the whole drug scene was going on. I was just in the 6th grade, and I just fell in with that crowd. And, and it just one thing led to another, and I just got deeper and deeper into the darkness.
Now, if I remember correctly, when I heard you speak, you went to prison for a while?
Well, 3 times.
The lowest point in my life was in high school. My mother was married to a very abusive man. I came home one night. My mom's husband almost had killed her. She was lying on the floor in a pool of blood, and the only reason why she lived was that she pretended like she was dead. So I had a vendetta against that man. I was a born-again Christian at that time, but I told him over the phone, if you come by this house one more time, I'll shoot your head off. We were scared. He was threatening to burn the house down. He was a very mean, very demon-possessed man. And it affected all of us. I felt like I wanted to just run away from home, which I did. And I went on the road at that time and did a lot of things that I will talk about. That was very hard. It was hard for my mother, and it was so hard for my mother that she died from just trauma. She was not feeling well one day, and I took her to the hospital just to get checked out. She was doing just fine, and the next morning I got a phone call, and they said, you better get over here, your mother has stopped breathing. And when I got to the hospital, her doctor was standing there with a very stern look on his face, and she had passed away. The doctor was flabbergasted. There was nothing wrong with my mother. I think my mother just checked out.
Worst thing that ever happened to me was probably being molested as a child by family members. So that's probably the worst thing that ever happened.
How old was you?
It started when I was 3.
3 years old?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long did that go on?
Until I was 14.
Claire Culwell was an abortion survivor. And when she met her biological mother said if there was any other way out, she would have taken it. Another abortion survivor is Michelle Odom. Her biological mother said her biggest regret was not turning and running.
The worst thing that ever happened to you in your whole life?
I would say going to prison.
Going to prison. Worst thing that ever happened to you?
I mean,
Couldn't think of nothing no worse.
I can't.
Losing your freedom.
I mean, I've had cancer. I've lost loved ones. But going to prison, when I totaled it all up, it was the worst thing. But as Joseph said, they meant it for evil, but God meant it for good.
I was still able to function. I was a functioning alcoholic, I guess you could say, or drug addict, or all of the above. But what I was doing was I was killing everyone around me, including myself. My doctor had told me that I had about 8 months before I went into liver failure. So the night that my wife left with my son, I had no care whatsoever. I was drunk. I didn't care. Good riddance is what I thought. It was only 2 or 3 days later, after I had dried out, that I realized what I had actually done. So when I was 25, I got real serious about my drinking. I owned a business, and I was doing very well to be so young. And what I discovered is the money enabled me to live like Satan. I mean, I was just Satan incarnate when I was drinking. And the money was allowing me to do that. So that's the very first thing that God took away from me, was my business and my money. But what I didn't know is that the Lord had another plan for me, and He was coming for me. Yeah, so you know the sound that a bottle makes when it opens. Well, I heard that sound like I had every night for years before. But directly following that sound was a sound I had never heard audibly. And I knew immediately it was the voice of God. And He simply told me, live or die. And I knew that if I didn't go pour that bottle down the drain right then, He was going to kill me. He was taking me out. He had something for me to do, and I could either do it or die. And it was really no option. I didn't have any in between. He wasn't going to allow me to live my life running His name down any longer.
But one morning I was doing my devotions, and the Lord's like, okay, now you're going to write a devotional. Help women heal from their abortion. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Just close the book and go to work, and I'm done. But by the end of the day, I realized it's something that needed to be done.
So how do you cope with that? How do you cope with knowing you extinguish life?
At the time when I made that choice, I was backslidden. You know, I grew up in and out of church, and about 17, I walked away. And when I was 21, almost 22, I made this decision. And I realized that afterwards, I was like, I'm relieved. It's almost like I can go on with life. You know, everything will be different. Everything will be the same, which is what they tell you in the clinic. You know, just do this and be over and done with, and you can go on with the life normally. Well, you don't live a life normally. You think about the situation that you chose to do pretty much every day. It comes up in some way. And you can either go into denial or go into depression. Well, behind my brick wall that I built over the years was denial. I shoved the experience down so deep inside that I didn't want anybody to know anything. And I was just going to hide my secret and go on with life.
So while I'm in jail, this happens the day I come back from that first church service, right? I come back in there and I'm already amazed because something's going on, right? I don't know what it is. And all of a sudden they yell, the Gideons are here. Well, listen, I would go into motel rooms and I would pull out that Gideon's Bible and I would lean it against the curtains to make sure nobody could peek in there. So I knew what a Gideon was on the Bible, but I didn't know anything about them. And so in my mind, I'm thinking there's going to be these long, white-haired guys like from, some kind of mystical movie. They're going to be glowing out there, like, what are the Gideons doing in jail?
Floating.
Yeah. And so it was amazing. All these guys line up and they're getting Bible studies. And so I come to the door and I look through the little hole and there's a guy out there and he does have a beard. He doesn't have long hair, but he is glowing. And his name was Johnny Ferguson. He's going on to be with the Lord now. And so I said, you're bringing Bible studies in here. And I said, how much are they?
I had to take it a step at a time, one day at a time. And the whole time, understanding that my mother was in the middle of a divorce when this happened. So we didn't have enough time to get through the divorce to get his name off the will that gave him permission to live in the house should she die first. Well, she didn't. She died first with no divorce. I had just moved into the house with her, in which if I'm sitting there watching my mother, looking at her, trying to figure this thing out, I get word that I have 24 hours to get out of my mother's house because he's moving back in. His lawyers said, you've got 24 hours. You got to get all your stuff out, all the stuff that you want from, well, I had to get all of Mother's stuff out because he would have destroyed it. So I had to go from there to meet with the divorce lawyer to try to figure out what is next. And then from there, I had to go to the house, waiting on my brother to come, and to pack up a whole house. He moved back in, laughing his head off, like, yeah, gotcha now. I'm a Christian and I believe in forgiveness and I believe in walking in forgiveness. That was tough. That was tough. He shows up at the funeral and makes a big scene. We should be going through a divorce, now we're in a funeral. And he had to be thrown out and I called the police and they put him in jail for one night. He came out hotter than you know what. People said, you better watch out about that Ed. He says he's going to come over and kill you.
In the Black household, when that happened, you had to be quiet. It was taboo. Couldn't say anything, especially when it's people in your family. Well, as a child, I just knew it wasn't right. As an adult, until 2017, I was an angry adult, mad at the world because I didn't feel like no one had my back and no one believed me and no one tried to rescue me. And so it wasn't until 2017 where I told God, I said, I'm tired of living this way and I'm tired of being angry and I'm tired of being physically exhausted by that being on my mind so much. And I asked God to heal me and release me of that. And he did.
Prison was difficult in a lot of ways because, first of all, I have a family that loves me. Even when I messed up, my wife, my kids, they love me. And that's a big deal because the majority of men in prison don't have anyone but their mom that loves them.
Wow.
Because they burned every relationship. And so I had several men there tell me that I was the answer to their mom's prayer.
Wow.
Because their moms had been praying for someone to come to help their son.
So you was teaching them in prison.
Yeah, but here's the deal. When I first found out I was going to prison, I was told all along by my criminal attorney, you're not going to prison. First-time offender, nonviolent, you've made voluntary restitution, all that. But when I finally found out I was going, then I had a decision to make. Am I going to go in there and say, God, what's up? Why are you allowing this? Or am I going to go in there knowing, first of all, that there's consequences to sin, and I did steal money, and I deserve to go to prison. So I could go in there with a horrible attitude, or I could say, God, you've allowed this, so I want to shine for you in a dark place.
Oh, wow.
I want to make a difference in here. I want to not only grow myself in here, but I want to make a difference with these men that I'm going to be with 24 hours a day.
Wow.
So it's amazing. When we ask God to use us, He will use us.
At work, and God spoke to me for the second time, and He said, I need you to remind this man of the promise he made me when he had cancer. Now, I didn't even know this man had cancer or had ever been sick. So I said, okay, all right, I'll do that. So I walked in and I told the man, I said, I got something I got to tell you. Lord wants me to tell you that to remind you of the promise you made when you had cancer. He looked at me and said, I never made any promise to God. Oh, okay. So thanks a lot. You know, I don't know who was talking to me. It must not have been God is what I thought, right? Well, that night, my phone rings, and I knew as soon as I looked down and saw his name, I knew. Because you don't call a crazy man at 9:30 p.m., right? I answered the phone. I said, hey, man, what's up? And he's crying. He's bawling, crying. He said, you're right. You're absolutely right. He said, my wife reminded me. He said, I told her about this holy roller that I met at work, and I told her what you told me, and she put her fork down and turned ghost white and said, don't you remember, before you went back into surgery, you did promise God that if He would heal you of this cancer, that you would spend the rest of your life singing for Him. He was a professional musician through the 70s and 80s and very famous, had played with all the big names, presidential inaugurations, Good Morning America. He had done it all. And so I knew at that moment that God had sent me after him. And so now we were together, and we are still together, professionally and spiritually, for the rest of our lives. We're going to be hooked together until one of us leaves this earth. And me and him started playing together, and we still play together, usually every day. And so once that started, the ball just started rolling. God started sending us musicians into church that the church had never had before, and we've ended up forming our band, which is Copperhead Highway.
It's a godsend. It's a devotional. It's the way the Lord is saying, I'm here. I forgive you. I love you. Let's go through healing together. Let's do this journey. You're not alone in this situation. There are plenty of retreats and Bible studies to help women and men go through healing for this decision so that they can find hope and they can have forgiveness from the Lord and they can have love and the things in their life that they need back. It's like the Great Exchange, which is what the cross is all about. This is the power that Jesus gives us, that he offers us forgiveness and love and acceptance and joy, when exact opposite reasons that we made that decision, or the decision was made for us, or we're forced upon us.
Yeah.
You know, it's him that gives us that hope. And realizing that it's a daily process. The book is full of devotionals. You can take this 13-week devotion and turn it into a year study. You can't forgive yourself for that decision. But what you need to do is forgive those in the process that helped you make this decision, or the doctors. But what you need to do is accept Jesus' love, his forgiveness. That's where the key is. The bottom line is Jesus, and is to talk about what Jesus has done for us. Well, the great exchange took place on the cross. And it's what we need to do is to receive from Jesus everything that he has for us And it's hard because, like you said, Bob, it's like, forgive myself. That's a tough decision. But the thing is you can't forgive yourself. Jesus paid the ultimate price and the ultimate sacrifice of forgiveness. And it is so simple that it's hard.
Well, we went there the first week, and we really didn't know what they was talking about. I mean, I'd never even opened the Bible, really. And so the pastor was talking about...
No Christian background, no Christian families, just, you knew nothing.
Nothing.
But something told you to go to church.
Well, I know now that was Jesus calling our name, and we just didn't know how to answer.
And your only thought was, I got to go to church.
Yeah. So the pastor was talking about staying in the race, and I knew that he used to drag race cars, and so did we, so I'm thinking if I come next week, he's going to talk about some stuff
that you know about.
Yeah, you know, say shave some seconds off that ET, you know. But I know now that he was talking about Paul staying in the race. But that made us come back. And when we came back, the pastor was preaching, and the first thing he said is, everyone in here is a sinner. There's no one in here that's not a sinner. And I'm thinking, somebody done told him that me and Tammy was there. So we listened to the message, and when it got down to the end of the message, I don't even know what he was preaching on, really. But he come down off the stage and took his mic off, and when he stood up, I was standing right there in front of him. I guess it kind of shocked him. And I don't even know what he said, but I said, I do. And he said, well, that's the right answer. I said, okay, good. So as I was standing down there, I realized that, you know, I was down front, and there was probably 4,000 people in that auditorium. I'm thinking, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to turn around here in a minute. And when I was thinking and hearing everybody clapping and hollering and singing, because I was sitting on the 11th row and I was the second seat in, and Tammy was sitting on the end, I thought I might have knocked her down when I got out to go down to the front. But when I turned around, she was standing right beside me, and the Lord changed both of our lives that day at the same time, at the same place. And he knew that if he didn't change both of us, that one would drag the other down, because, I mean, we've been together forever. We've done everything together.
And y'all instantly was sobered up, give up drugs, give up alcohol, perfectly clean after that.
Yep.
No program.
No program. I've been a drug addict for over 30 years, and September 19th, hadn't drank anymore, hadn't smoked, done no drugs, no pornography, and only time I cuss is she makes me.
So you're telling me now, so what you're telling me is who the Son sets free is free indeed.
That's right.
No pill, no steps, just Jesus took that desire away from you.
Yeah.
And set you free.
Yeah.
We had tried to quit before many times, and even quit for a little while, but the drugs, it just kind of sucks you back in. But it took Jesus.
Yeah, took Jesus. Jesus took it all.
And no more desire, just
Nope.
wow.
But let me tell you, I said the sinner's prayer, you know, kind of put the nail in the experience there. We walked back into the day room, and of course now everything's going on, right? People are up, superlatives are flying everywhere, and every time I heard a cuss word, it sounded dirty. And then of course I cuss so bad, you know, they're coming out of my mouth, and I'm cringing. And I actually had a man come up to me and go, man, what is wrong with you? I said, I don't know. All I know is I dropped to my knee in the cell last night, cried out to God, got a peace, read the Bible all night, went to this church service, some police preached, I done prayed and asked God to come to my life, now cuss words sound dirty.
That's too good.
And I'm going to tell you something, from that moment on, God started changing my life. And he gave me a hunger and fascination with his word. And I imagine I probably read it more than most people because I had more time because I was in prison during the first time studying the word. And now as a pastor, I have, 15 to 20 hours a week to study the word. And I'm more fascinated by it now than I ever have been. And there's just no end to the depth of it and the life-changing that it does in our lives.
I don't remember actually at a moment of time saying, Jesus, come into my heart. It's crazy, but and all of my experiences with the Lord has been outside the church building. I've just always known him. I know that's as far back as I remember. I was always talking with him. Always, he was with me. It would have been real young, real young. But I had a praying grandmother, my mother's mother in Dalton, Georgia, which I stayed with my grandmother and grandfather all the summers when I'd come down from Chattanooga, and I'd go to church with her.
They didn't even know that was possible.
God lets things happen and lets them happen to you.
Yeah.
So you can be the person that leads them. That's awesome.
I mean, there's no, they say all the time, Miss Pam, it is really because of you that we're where we are.
Wow.
And he used my brokenness, and I tell anybody, and I was telling my friends a few weeks ago, I'm like, serving saved me. I didn't have time to have a pity party over my sons because I threw myself into being a servant.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. We have to know and understand that all things work together for those who love God and are the called according to his purpose. Does that mean that everything we go through we can blame on God because he caused it? Well, that's a debate for another show. We have to know and understand that our testimony is not our past. Our testimony is what God did that changed us from a person over here to the person over here. The Bible says that we are a new creation in Christ. It says that all the old things pass away and everything becomes new. You can say that, well, maybe I was good and not too bad back here. But that doesn't matter because all of our righteousness is but filthy rags unto the Lord.
Take a walk.